Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome to Gen TV. Tonight, another great conversation. One of our champion, fighter, freedom fighter, Mr. Joseph Sanyojo, is here in the studio with me. It's a great conversation. Like I said, we're gonna be talking a lot about some human rights issues. And essentially, we're going to be talking about the protest today. And as you already know, Joseph and his team are not new, although he live in New York, is not new to Washington, D.C. Always come with his team, a great team, freedom fighters. He probably will tell us a little bit more. Often come in town to continue to protest on the issues that we're going to hear from himself. So before we go to we bring Joseph to the show, we're gonna make sure that we kind of warm up the environment, with some kind of highlights pictures that we have today. We're gonna play that while our friend Joseph is preparing himself to enter the studio. So that is in the minutes to come. All right.
This is a message to the government, expressing what's exactly on the people's mind. Twakola ebinyigiriza obulamu bwaffe na buli kitumalako eddembe lyaffe. Uganda etambula edda mabega, kituuse n'okutwetamya eggwanga lyaffe. Mulimba mutufuga bubinyo nammwe, kale tetuganye mwalwana mu nsiko. Naye omwana gwe wasanga nga tannazaalibwa kati naye yazaala ndadda. Kino mukiŋŋambire muze yabamutukako, saba ne bazeeyi banne bamugambeko. Eno ensonga nkyamu nnyo gyalemeddeko kati eggwanga lyonna lyenyamidde. Bagambe yalinga demokulase bamuvuluka kati yafuuka na hipokulise. Bagambe yali fundamento kyendi mwagizaala wakati mugifudde no kyenji. Bagamba kyensonga ez'abalwanya kati mwazibukako namwe mukola biri ebyabali. Bakusaba nti constitution yaabwe togikwatako kuba mwe musigadde essuubi lyabwe. I say we are fighting for freedom. Kampala Mokoto Mbale Jinja. We are fighting for freedom. Kabale Lukunjiri Malala Kasese. We are fighting for freedom. Soroti Chitugum Arua Lidagum. We are fighting for freedom. I say Wakiso Masaka Wende Mijana. We are fighting for freedom. Yo! We are living in a time similar to the one of slave trade. This operation is worse than apartheid. The gun is the master, citizen slave. The ball of Africa is bleeding. Question, what was the purpose of the liberation when we can't have a peaceful transition? What is the purpose of the constitution when the government disrespect the constitution? Where is my freedom of expression when you charge me because of my expression? Look what you're doing to this nation. What are you teaching the future generation? See our leaders become misleaders and see our mentors become tormentors. Freedom fighters become dictators. They look on the youth and say we are distractors. We are fighting for freedom. Bossy Amalaba.
All right. Like I said, that was kind of a warm up to bring the spirit where it's supposed to be. We have our brother here in the studio, Mr. Joseph. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, my brother. You back and forth in Washington D.C. Between New Jersey, New York, and Washington D.C. Welcome, my friend. Welcome to Gen TV. The show is Talk to Me tonight. You're gonna be talking to me about what was going on. Yeah, it looks like you showed up in 3 parts of DC, very strategically organized. So tell us a little bit, just a little bit about yourself, who you are. Most people don't know you, and why your team and yourself, make their way back here in Washington D.C. And we're gonna be talking about different sites, of course.
Thank you so much, Mr. Malik Mendoza of Gun TV. Thank you. It's always a pleasure appearing in your great program. It's a great platform for Africans and African issues. We don't have platforms like yours. Very rare to have one that actually focuses on policy and governance issues. So thank you so much. It's a great pleasure. Yes, so I am Joseph Senyonjo, as your caption says, the coordinator of the Ugandan diasporas in New York and New Jersey for democracy and human rights. So we today came to Washington, D.C., and we went to three strategic places, as you mentioned, the Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation. And then we proceeded to actually, we started with the British Embassy, and then we went to the Bill and Gates Melinda Foundation, and then ended up at the White House to raise issues that concern us as Ugandans and as Africans as a whole. Okay.
Absolutely, but I've covered many many protests, if I can say the least, when you're in town. Today was a little different. You started your protest at the British embassy. The UK embassy in Washington, D.C. Can you tell us specifically what the symbolic behind the fact that you wanted to start your protest there? Usually, I remember the last time you started at the World Bank. It looks like you have a specific message. Of course, that we also have a video to kind of, tell us what was that symbolic. But tell me a little bit from your own perspective as the speaker for this organization that you are here today. What was the symbolic behind it?
Well, thank you so much again. As you may know, Uganda was a British colony. So the British are our colonial masters, and they have a lot of influence regarding Ugandan policy. Both US consult with them, the EU consult with them, and the British government, they don't give a lot of direct money on a bilateral basis, but they have a lot of trade monies through the UK export entity. And they also they help coordinate World Bank money, aid money for refugees and all that. So when you go to your British Embassy website, they say they coordinate a lot of the programs that come to Uganda, even if they're not funding them directly. So given their so-called expertise on Uganda as the former colonial masters, they're very, very influential in the policies of what happens in Uganda. But beyond that, we have a very specific reason. The UK is the only major, along with France, and maybe to a less extent Germany, that did not condemn in strong terms what happened in 2021, the election that was rigged, and in fact they endorsed the rigged election. The Minister for Africa at the time, James Dadridge, came out on January 16th and says, we basically not the re-election of President Museveni. So basically saying, endorsing the election. Whereas the United States said the election was not free, not fair. The European Union also came out with a resolution about the elections and calling them in question. The UK basically endorsed that election. So we came out to voice our displeasure with the UK's continued support, and without even, again, literally, they're more interested in their business with Uganda. They've not really kind of stood up to the values that the UK is renowned for. So we are saying, no, we have to go and send a strong message to them. So that's exactly what we did. And of course, we're going to talk more about the message later as we go through.
Absolutely. But, like I said, we have some images when it comes to that message as well, as you can see on the screen. That's one of our brother Tony that was actually voicing his concern about what was going on. I know one of the things that I have to tell my viewers is that the sound, there was some issues with the the microphone. But we're going to do the best to listen, and then probably, catching up and explain exactly what was the fundamental, the reason behind, this symbolic stand tonight. So we're gonna listen to brother Tony, and then of course, if there is something unclear, you probably can come and add up to what Tony was saying today, to this morning.
Well drafted for the UK embassy, and now this is my opinion on what we are doing here. Now we all know that the UK, in that document we read about their stance at Bobby Wine. It was just lyrics in a song that was interpreted to be homophobic. But we have a dictator that signed a bill into law and held several speeches, press conferences, affirming that he was going to enforce that law. And surprisingly, the UK here, they rather increased their funding to the dictator, and they are praising the democracy and observation of human rights by Museveni. So these are the double standards we are talking about. And if Africans, I know the UK's impact is not just in Uganda, but it's all over, especially in British colonies.
Yeah. Okay, so Joseph, it seems to me that of course there was a speech before it, a little bit longer, but because of the technical, the sound was not as clear as we wanted it to be. But it looks like the essential question here is a double standard. That's the word that I heard a lot in front of the British, the UK embassy. It looks like there was a lot of talk about double standards. What standards are we talking about here? What why are we trying to hold UK accountable? Can you tell a little bit about the standard they stand for, and they're now applying the same thing to Uganda?
Right. Well, thank you so much. Again, a couple of examples I'm going to give. One is example of the British very strong stance on Ukraine and what's happening there. They are one of the leading nations that is against the atrocities of Putin and freedom. Museveni is doing the same thing in the region. He's doing it in the Sudan. He's done it in the Sudan and DRC. It's ongoing. It's been going for many, many years. And over 6 million Congolese have died. Museveni has invaded neighboring countries, but he's serving British interests. So, and of course, African lives, some supposedly don't seem to have as much as the same value as a European lives in Ukraine. So that was standard number one. Britain is on top of that. Now, another example is exactly as I said. Let me actually read the actual statement that James Dadrich that I mentioned earlier released after the elections in Uganda. It says the UK government welcomes the relatively calm passing of the elections in Uganda, and notes the re-election of His Excellency Yoweri Museveni as president. And basically endorsing the election, as I said. Now, if you contrast that with the UK's statement on the elections in Bolivia, was it Bolivia? Yeah, Bolivia, which was in 2019. It gave the UK gave credence to false claims that there was a substantial shortcomings in the elections there, which undermined the credibility and transparency and required a second round of voting. This is in Bolivia. UK said, these elections they had a lot of shortcomings. They should be rerun. And actually, they forced the person to step down. The president of Bolivia. I mean, like the UK and of course other, like the US and other countries, Western countries, forced the person to step down. What was his name? I think Evo Morales. And then it turned out that actually the elections were not rigged. It was but the guy had stepped down already. So they were quick to jump on So basically, why is that? This is the double standards we're talking about. One is a U.S. ally serving their interest in Africa. Remember, the UK had a Brexit a few years ago, and they have the Commonwealth, a huge Commonwealth. And Tony was talking about the UK increasing. I think in 2020, right after the massacre of Ugandans in November 2020, UK increased its UK foreign aid trade from 600 allocation to the UK Export Agency from 600 billion pounds to 2 billion pounds right after, just barely a month after the massacre of Ugandans on the streets, and that was related to elections, right? So now, so you can see the double standards there. So the UK basically is looking at Africa, Uganda, and its Commonwealth, because the British are the big empire, and so they're like saying, well, we're gonna leverage this, to kind of counter the effects of our Brexit, because they think we can, and Uganda is one of the premier candidates for that, and they're using it. So 77, they're over 200, I think, 100 UK. There are over 100 companies in the Uganda, UK companies operating in Uganda. So Museveni is good for their commercial interests, and supposedly they are dealing with them and security and other issues. They train the police and the army that actually kill Ugandans. UK has money that they're giving to the police. After there was a lot of backlash, after James Durbridge released a statement, about a month or so later, he released a statement saying, well, the UK is going to cut £40,000 of training to the police and the army. Like £40,000? Are you kidding me? That is like a slap on the wrist. He was just like, kind of like, I have to appear to be doing something. £40,000? I mean, really? So those are the double standards we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the UK they're not unique in that, techniques.
Right.
If you go to so-called Francophone Africa,
Right.
the countries, the 14 countries that deal with the colonial France, it's exactly the same thing, while France is having a fair election, democratic election, but at the same time they would tolerate what's going on in Africa, in Francophone Africa, especially those regions where there's a lot of natural resources. Usually they don't care. So you care about democracy when it comes to your own country, but you don't want the same thing for the people that you colonized. And because that is the way to keep this country in inferior situation, because the same people, they will go on and turn around and come and criticize these same countries. So they use different kind of tactics. It will be the government will allow you to do this kind of craziness, but at the same time your media in your country will go back and criticize about how bad those leaders or the system is. But how come your media is criticizing something that you openly allowed? So the double standard, like you said, is not just in Uganda or with the UK. The double standards goes beyond. All colonizers use the same methods, and that's those methods that have continually kept the African people away from freedom. I want to quickly, because we have people watching, I want to quickly thank those who are connected right now. Please, share the link. This actually is a new page, our new page here that deals with, particularly with English speaking, because we used to have just one page, English, both English and French. Now we have a completely new page for the English speaking Africans, so that we can give an opportunity to everybody to get connected and to follow what's going on. There's so many issues going on our continent, and we have the responsibility to voice those issues, just like those freedom fighters, people like Joseph Sanyonjo, brother Tony, and many other sisters that actually sometimes come from far away, some from Chicago. They would drive down here to DC just to, it's amazing when I see this gentleman and brother and sister, when I see them in DC, it's just amazing to see how people can be so dedicated to the cause of the mother country. So Proscovia, thank you again for watching. And I'm gonna put here the comments here. She said, "Thank you, Mr. Joseph, and for always being there." I think that's very, very nice to send those information. You know what? I'm gonna put Joseph back here, so those comments you can see these comments yourself. You have another one. I mean, it's still the same sister, Proscovia. You say my fellow oppressed Ugandan. Let each of us do what we can do. Join efforts in doing so that the message will be heard. So what you said to a sister like this that is calling upon our brothers and sisters, not just Ugandans, you have to be African. This is whatever. There's a big mistake that we usually make, thinking that whatever is going to you in Uganda is always, that is Ugandan's business. But when you see the perspective, bigger perspective, picture of it, just like we were talking about double standards. If you're from the Francophone Africa, don't think that wherever is going to Uganda is different from where you live in Africa. So again, sister, I think it's a good thing to call on our brothers and sisters to support whatever folks like Joseph are doing, spending their own pocket money, to finance these efforts, coming to DC, spending time to come up here with his team. You have brother Tommy Sumbuga, also excellent when it comes to doing something in this effort. So please say something toward this brother and sister Ether, my sister Kawisa, who's always there, putting all pocket money to push this agenda forward. Please say something about this gentleman so that people also know who they are.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. First of all, I want to acknowledge the ladies. By the way, the ladies are the backbone of the struggle for democracy and human rights in Uganda. When we look at our movement, the people that mostly do, they many times they don't want to be in the foreground. So they do a lot of the dirty work. They do a lot of the financing. They do a lot of the traveling. Every protest we've had, it's been mostly the ladies that have actually done a lot of sacrifice. So I'm very, very grateful for people like Miss Kaweto, Gina, and all the ladies that travel 8 miles from Boston, and of course, my friend Proscovia. We used to have a daily tweet session where we exposed what was going on in Uganda, and Proscovia was one of the people that were always on the call. Now, what you said is extremely important. The struggle against neo-colonialism and so-called imperialism is an African struggle. As I said, actually the French are probably some of the very worst colonialists because unlike the British, the French they didn't have as big a bunch of an empire. So whatever countries they colonized, they really milk them, to the maximum. And of course, you see what is happening in Niger. You've seen what is happening in Mali. There was a huge backlash against the French. What they've done in Haiti. Where they're making Haiti pay for having colonized Haiti. Impoverish the people and put some kind of class against the majority of people, and who are, again, French colonial agents. So the French are really, really terrible colonizers. And yes, as you said, what is happening in Uganda is not unique. And so at some point, we as Africans, we have to join hands and join hands at these demonstrations and say we no to the French, no to the US, no to the UK, no to neo-colonialism. We actually had a protest that was titled "No to Neo-Colonialism" a few months back, and we need to have more of those. We need to collaborate and use our voices jointly to send a very strong message. And so that is when you see people saying, well, ECOWAS and France and the US don't intervene. Don't let the people in Nigeria decide what they want, but they want over time. Of course, so-called coups are not necessarily good, because usually they end up sometimes in worse situation than before. But let the people in Chad or whatever. Okay, Chad had Chad people obviously was a.
Joseph,
yes.
I wanted, since you mentioned coups in Africa, and you brilliantly say that we don't push coup, but when and there was a gentleman from France, from the Congo, that was on my program, I think last week. He made the same argument. He said, although we don't support coup, but if it's done in order to liberate the country, then that is something that we're gonna have to deal with. Let's talk a little bit about this situation in Niger, and talking about coup. In Niger, you just see a country like Niger. You see the World Bank and the IMF, classifying this country as one of the poorest on
Right.
planet Earth. In the meantime, the yellow cakes that come from Niger, uranium, comes from Niger, is responsible, for example, for lighting France. Maybe some people will talk, some experts will talk up to 80%. That natural resources go over there. In the meantime, in Niger, you will see that most people don't even have lighting. They don't even have lights, and they're poor. So if you see an ongoing situation like that, and you analyze the situation, and you know that there's some invisible hands going on, not to say the least, because we know who are those invisible hands, and France is number one on the list.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have somebody who's, like those gentlemen that, stand up to say enough is enough, we have to take down those puppets, then at that point, that's exactly, I believe that's what you're saying. Cool or not good. But in these particular situations, we just have to step by and say, listen, why was the reason for the coup?
Exactly.
So I kind of hear what you're saying. I'll let you continue. Again, you have your brothers and sisters that participate in this show here. Ether that is saying Uganda is lucky to have you. Thank you so much. I believe so. Go ahead, Joseph.
No, that was so nice of her. Well, thank you so much. That was so nice of Esther. Thank you. Well, yes, the issue again is, sometimes to get rid of these agents of the colonial masters like France, the UK, the US, people, sometimes go through means military to try to liberate themselves. And again, obviously the issue is, how do you control these military men after they take up power? But sometimes you have to go there. Change has to happen anyway, because as I said, Niger is not an exception. Of course, the Congo, we know the Congo is perhaps DRC Congo, perhaps the richest nation in terms of minerals. But again, the people are some of the very poorest in the world, because it's colonial interests and business interests, both corporate and direct colonial government to government, or government to government collaboration. They're exploiting the Africans and feeding the industries at next to nothing. They're getting these very very valuable minerals. And by the way, this is not confined to just the US and Europe. China controls, I think, over 80% of the cobalt in the DRC. China, the same thing. So people fall into these traps and say, oh, Russia, China, the US. Basically, what are African interests? We have to look at African interests. It's not Chinese interest or Russian interest or what, or US or UK.
Russian, even Russian.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see that the Russian will step in, and I believe there was a conference, on last conference, some of the leaders were saying that, listen, saying no to colonial powers like France or UK or whatever is included in this packet. It's not to embrace a new power to come and control us. So I think we have to make clear, the African people have to make sure that this message is clear to Russia, it's clear to China, that we are fighting for our freedom, not to allow you to put those shackles back in our hands or foot. And also that message has to be clear, because when you see the way Chinese are, of course they will come and then don't criticize their dictators, on the African continent, and it seems that they're very happy with that situation. Having a partner that is not involving your internal affairs, but the bottom line is, do they do business in a way that benefits the people of Africa? That should be one of the problem that we really have to make sure that we clear with.
Exactly. Just about last week or so, Museveni was in Russia along with other African leaders in St. Petersburg and met with Putin. And then Putin had a special meeting with Museveni and his delegation. And Putin said, Uganda is one of Russia's biggest or best partners in Africa. Now, this Sam Museveni is so-called ally of the U.S. and the U.K. And that's the reason they justify giving him billions of dollars because he's a champion of their interests in the region. But Russia is also saying that Museveni is one of their biggest allies in Africa, and in fact, he praised Russia and China for helping Africa fight against colonialism, and invited Russia to come and do business, and including the oil pipeline. There was an East African crude oil pipeline, which is causing havoc to thousands of people in Uganda and Tanzania, and it threatens to pollute the Lake Victoria basin, the rivers and swamps that feed into Lake Victoria, on which over 40 million East Africans depend on. But because of the environmental movement and us in the diaspora and a lot of organizations, they're having trouble getting money to finance the pipeline. So Museveni now invited Russia to come and invest in the pipeline. It said, Russia is now helping Uganda build a nuclear power plant or nuclear power plant. He said that Russia is also, Putin announced that Russia is going to bring an epidemiological lab, a truck-mounted epidemiological lab to Uganda. Now when we hear epidemiological lab from Russia, which is known for its poisons and whatever, like, why do we need a huge Russian expert with an epidemiological lab? We already have like research institutes, some of the best in Africa, that are known. They've done work in Ebola. They've done a lot of great work. Even the CDC in Atlanta has worked with them. Now, Putin announced they're building an epidemiological lab. Already, Uganda is working with North Korea. There is a North Korea plant. There is a Ugandan military facility where supposedly poison agents are produced. Now you're going to bring the Russians that have this Novikov, whatever they're going to produce this. When they say epidemiological lab, you have to be very scared. Now this is the U.S. ally, Russia, who is very much in close, and China, of course. Interestingly, in December, Museveni came. In fact, I don't know if you didn't go to the White House. We went to the White House afterwards, but we had a picture of President Biden with Museveni. So when Museveni came in December, Africa Summit, I think it was, he had a photo up with Biden, and so here, and then of course they had the same kind of photo up with, much more. In the U.S., I guess he didn't really meet with, he just met in a general meeting, but in Russia, he had a really special meeting. So I even forgot what I was going to talk about, but at this point, but it's really, this guy is about his interests. It's not about U.S. interests. It's not about Chinese interests. It's not about Russian interests. But the key thing, we as Africans have to look out for our interests, because the Russians, the Chinese, the Americans, the French, the British, they're all looking for interest. We are the only one that are serving their interest through these dictators like Museveni. So we really need to rally behind each other and say, enough is enough. Let's join forces and push these guys out.
Absolutely. I mean, the main point here is that it's time for African people to look after their own interest. Everybody else does except for us. And and that unity that you call upon is essential. Because if we are a country like Equatorial Guinea or Gabon, just 2 million people, cannot go and try to have the deal with China of the United States. What kind of deal is that?
Exactly.
What kind of deal is that you have a billion of a country that represents a billion of people, and the other one is just 2 million or less than 1 million people. So that's silliness. It's time for us to come together and to see this issue as a common issue to our continent and trying to solve it as a unified people. So we're gonna take a note of. I'm gonna let you brief a little bit. I'm gonna play all picture highlight that we have on the previous rally, and when we come back, I want you to quickly say something about your presence in front of the White House. You already started to say something about the.
Do you have time for me to just add something very briefly on what I was saying? Of course,
go ahead. It's your time, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. So what I was saying before, like Biden, after Museveni appeared with Biden at the White House in December and had a photo op, he went to Chicago and had a so-called trade summit where we're supposed to attract U.S. investors to Uganda. And I went for a protest, but because unfortunately I was alone on that particular day, I decided to just, go in and see what they were discussing. And so while I was there, this son-in-law of the dictator Museveni, they showed a kind of an investment promotion video. And guess what? The investment promotion video had a Chinese, it was full of China. In China Industrial Park, they have this huge industrial Chinese park where they have industries and this and that. And if you look at that film, it's in Uganda, you think you're in China. The big building, just like when you go to Chinatown, they have like all these signs in Chinese, whatever. So it's secluded. And I think it's in Kapeka region of Uganda where the brother of the dictator, has a very exclusive, secluded area. A huge industrial park. It's about China, and they're using this Chinese. You say, "Oh, look, the Chinese are doing this. Oh, you guys can also come." So China is already hugely in Africa, and the funny thing is that by the U.S. Oh, actually, that will go into the next segment. But just wanted to show that this is the guy appears with Biden, but at the same time he's appearing with Putin and China, and actually he's giving them a red carpet. In Uganda, into Uganda. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you, sir. You're off.
Yeah. Thanks so much. No, so as far as the diversifying our in a normal, some people in Gabon that now they use that they say normal, and normal Gabonese, somebody who's in a normal situation where normal African, right. I think diversifying our potential to our partners. For me, it's not that bad.
It's not bad.
Yes. Talking to America should not hold us back from talking to Chinese. Right. The only thing we're asking is that have to be in a way that whoever is talking has his own people interest at heart. That's all we're asking. But I don't think it should be. We should only talk because America talk to whoever. Exactly. So America talk to whoever they want to. So we should have the same right to speak to any partner we speak to. I want you to say something very quick. Tony mentioned something about M7. You want to say something real quick before we go to he said, well said, Mr. Joseph Museveni is a time bomb. his interests will always stand out. As African, it's important that we will make up our mind about M7. Can you say something real quick before we go to the break?
About what again? You said Tony said what?
M7. What is the M7? Yeah.
Museveni is Museveni, the dictator. That's that's what you want me to talk about?
No. I was thinking because I didn't really know what was M7 was about. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, eventually we're gonna tackle. I want you to elaborate just a little more on your stand, your presence in front of the White House, and quickly. And after that, we eventually gonna go to the second portion of this, which is the protest in front of the Bill Gates and Melinda. To show that while we are tackling and then political issues, there also another existential issue when it comes to our food, the way it's been poisoning, the way we've been actually trapped into this situation. And Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation have something to do with some of the stuff that you're protesting. That is going to be in the next minutes to come. All right, welcome back to Gen TV. Right now, I'm with my brother Joseph Sayonjo. Talking about the protest today, about double standards from the colonizers. It looks like it's so difficult to have a friend, so-called friend, that always look out from their own interests, but never the interests of their friends. What kind of friendship is that? And especially a country like America that we supposedly, supposed to have the better relation with with America. Given the history that we have, it's almost natural for America to be friends with Africa. Our people, not to, go back to country,
There's a connection show, no problem. Okay, frozen. I don't know if my connection. I can't hear you, sir. Hello?
Yeah, Joseph in the middle of nowhere. Hold on a second. I'm trying to get back to.
Okay. Yeah, because I got lost. You got lost. I couldn't hear you anymore, and you're frozen.
No, yeah, it's the internet. We would just shut down. Just stay there. Stay there. We're coming back.
Sure,
sure. Coming back.
Sure. Thank you.
Technician are working hard.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We want to apologize to our viewers for that interruption. This is live show, so everything is possible. And
Yeah.
so, only again to our viewers, there was a little interruption with, our network here. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. So yeah. So let's tackle the situation today about your stand at the White House. What was that for? Is this still the double standard with the United States? What is it about?
Yes, it's always about the double standards in the United States and the fact that, again, okay, sorry. Hello?
Go, talk, I'm listening.
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a delay.
Yeah, there's a delay, but you go ahead.
Okay, yes. So, yes, it was really about the double standards and the fact that the Biden administration is not living up to its pledge to put human rights and democracy at the center of U.S. foreign policy, and we've been talking about that. Well, and of course, Tony mentioned something about the LGBT issue, which I mentioned briefly. But basically, we raised issues about the Ugandans being abducted since the elections, before and since the elections. A lot of abductions and killings and torture. They've been documented by CNN, by the New York Times, by the Wall Street Journal, by the BBC, by the Economist. There've been a lot of articles. The Guardian, even the GW, the French newspaper, and even some French newspapers have written about the atrocities in Uganda. So the US is very much aware, and the Europeans are very much aware. But despite all that, Biden administration, the US ambassador to the United Nations, Greenberg, her name is Linda Greenberg. She went to Uganda sometime, I think, was it August or July last year, after Putin invaded Ukraine, and met with Museveni and held the relationship of the US's relationship with Museveni. And of course, went there to counter Russia's invasion. Like, how are you gonna pay attention to you? Why should Africans pay attention to US interests when you don't care about their lives? So I mean, I'm completely against the invasion in Ukraine. But a lot of Africans were like, what is this? People are dying, people are being killed by this dictator, and you're going there and say, oh, support us. And people are like, well, that's your business. It's whatever. They're hailing Museveni's, this ambassador, Linda Greenberg, she's an African American lady, went and held Museveni serving our interest in the region. People are being killed. Even as she was talking, she was visiting, people were being abducted by the regime. And we protest all the time. We send tweets, we tag all these people. And they're hailing the guy. So, this is, and of course, she's an appointee of Biden. So they're not living up to putting democracy and human rights at the center of foreign policy. And now, so at one point last year, they put some sanctions or travel restrictions. The very least you can do on certain people that supposedly that were responsible for this human rights abuses. But to our surprise, recently, one of the guy who heads the security ministry, his name is Jim Muhwezi, about a month ago, he came to Boston, so they put sanction travel restrictions on supposedly very key people that were involved in these atrocities. And then the guy who heads the ministry that is responsible for a lot of these atrocities comes to Uganda, to the US. So who did of course they don't tell you who they sanctioned. So we're on here like, is this even another gimmick? How can someone like Jim Muhwezi, who's responsible, whose ministry is responsible for a lot of these atrocities, come to get a free pass to the United States? Are they playing with their minds? Do they think Africans are dumb? So their interests again, don't value African lives. They don't value our human rights. They don't value democracy. And then they talk about democracy and human rights as center of foreign policy. So that's what we went to talk about at the White House and say, we are tired of this. I mean, incidentally, by doing that, and as I mentioned before, there is no difference between the US and China and Russia as far as a regular African is concerned. Because if you're sponsoring our operation, then you are no different. So you're pushing the African, even the common African, say, what's the difference? I might as well go with the Chinese. They're willing to build a road in my village. They're willing to do whatever, even though, of course they're exploiting you, but they're better than these guys. These guys pretend and they say, oh, we are for human rights and democracy, but there's no difference with Chinese. The Chinese don't pretend. The Russians don't pretend. They just, clearly about their interest and whatever. But America, but our interest matter to them in Europe, but not in Africa or countries like that. So that is what we want to talk about. Thank you.
Absolutely. We get it, Joe. Looks like it seems that the double standards. There's something else that should be added to that is the hypocrisy. There's a lot of hypocrisy going on, and we're not stupid. We see what's going on. Double standard, hypocrisy, all of this. You do one thing, and then you stand for one principle, and then you don't defend the same principle when it comes to some other stuff. We've seen a lot of stuff going on. For the freedom fighters, you know what's going on in the world. When we are defending our brothers and sisters that are dying in Ukraine, but at the same time, we're not saying anything that when it comes to our brothers and sisters in Palestine. So we've been seeing this stuff. We are, after a while, you come to the point where you don't believe in those. Those who say this stuff anymore.
Yes.
Principles are here, but those who push those ideas, it's like a broken record. When they talk, we know what truth is, but just don't tell us about nothing because you're not true to yourself. Exactly. Listen, we're gonna play because after before you went to the White House, I know. Right. There was a stand at the Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation, and that was a clear message up there. I'm gonna try to see if we still have that element here because we would like to play that to see exactly what this sister was talking about. I know there's also a lot of
power Uganda.
So we do have that speech. I got to say, I apologize. I'm going to apologize before we start, Joe, because the video was so long. We can't just where the sister was talking, knowing that you're going to be on the show and to give your perspective on the rest of it. Now, here, I see 1,300. Usually when we see that, we automatically know what is upstairs, right? So while we're here, tell us a little bit about this particular stand here, and then we can play the video to listen to her, and then you can come back and explain.
So just a brief introduction. So so that 1300 I Street, that is the offices of the Bill and Gates Melinda Foundation in Washington D.C. So we went there to send a very clear message to them that we do not want genetically modified seeds in Uganda, in Africa, because they pose a threat to our food sovereignty. So that's what it's about.
Absolutely. Excellent. Because you can see from the sign, Because and the reason why this was important, Joseph, because most people when they see you come in DC, it's always about they think politics is just about
Right.
a governor, somebody in the presidential office, but people don't pay attention about the most important. I mean, food security, how the food is being managed, on our continent is essential. And I'm so grateful to come to this rally to really see that your work and your team, whatever you're doing, is fantastic. Let's listen to the sister, and you will come back and tell us exactly why it was important for you to stand in front of this building.
We at People Power Uganda, as well as other grateful people worldwide, are fully cognizant of the significance and the scope of your magnanimous involvement in various global initiatives, particularly those in the Horn of Africa. This communication, however, serves to express our reservations about one aspect of this largely benevolent outreach. We believe the introduction of GMOs in Uganda, although well-intentioned, will nevertheless undermine and stymie the preservation of African food and food traditions. We aim to underscore the significance of safeguarding Africa's rich culinary heritage. Your assertion that the decision to adopt GM seeds and associated technologies lies within the realm of sovereignty is duly noted. Nevertheless, it can't be ignored that the substantial resources of the Gates Foundation, of which you are a co-chair, exert a proportionate influence over African scientists and.
There we go. So right there, she really laid out. She laid out what was the reason for your stand there. So I want to ask you, this is kind of, also new to me. I usually meet you on the ground of, saying that Museveni is killing his own people. He don't deserve any support from the West, because that support don't help his own people. But today, starting from the British embassy and then going to the to the Bill Gates Melinda Foundation, it looks like there was a newer element to this. I don't know, maybe there've been some stand like that before, but it was a little refreshing, because you brought me into something that I was not really pushing, taking seriously, and tell me the significance of that stand at the Bill and Melinda Foundation.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, there was a push. These so-called philanthro capitalists like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and companies like Monsanto are pushing for genetic seeds in Africa. And a lot of African countries, and they have a lot of money. Bill Gates, when they had, I think, was it G7? They had a meeting in France, and he was treated like a superstar. Is a person who's going to solve the food security issues in Africa. He's seen himself as this person who's going to solve the hunger problem in Africa, and so he, because of his money and his influence, is actually managed in conjunction with companies like Monsanto, huge multinationals that are involved in producing these seeds, GMO seeds. They have increasingly pushed African governments, or kind of persuaded them to accept GMO foods. In 1997, I think South Africa was the first country to accept GMO seeds, and now it's soy, corn, and some other food are all 100% GMOs. Now, why is this a problem? Why is GMO a problem to Africans? It's a problem because when they introduce GMO seeds, they're genetically modified, which means they're not indigenous. They've been modified, and so they're not indigenous to the country. But what they do is they contaminate the soil. They change the soil chemistry, and sometimes they also contaminate the local seeds. And what happens then? is that you can no longer grow your indigenous seeds. You know, you have to buy seeds from Monsanto, all these Western countries, in order to grow the food you need to eat. So either you know, as a farmer, if you have capacity, you buy it from the farmers, or you go to the shops and buy the seeds, or you get it from the government. But we know African governments are corrupt, they are vindictive. So if I'm one of the people or region that does not support the regime, chances are we may not be able to, if the government is going to distribute those seeds, we may not be able to get it. So that's one. You know, what does that mean? That means now we are no longer sovereign in terms of food. We have to import the food. Two, that food, the genetically modified foods, the effects of it are unknown. You know, like you know, because the genes are modified, just like in the U.S. You know, like they're talking about GMO chicken, GMO meats, and whatever. There was a lot of issues with that. So there was a reason why organic foods are very, very expensive. I mean, okay, partly it's because of the production. Perhaps you know, like the production is a little, it takes a bit more to produce it, inputs, but also because they're healthier than the GMOs. You know, because when you start playing with nature, you know, anything can happen in terms of cancer-causing diseases. Now, the other element of that is that once these seeds are introduced, then what happens if, God forbid, the seeds that is introduced all of a sudden, because of changing climate or whatever, they stop, for whatever reason, stop being productive. Then, you know, then you are going to starve because the seeds, for whatever reason, maybe it was a defective engineering of the seeds, they're not growing for whatever reason. Now you're doomed. You have to go back to Monsanto. You have to go back to the US. Oh, guys, we're starving. We don't have food. Give us seeds, solve our problem. You know, come and re-engineer this seed. So it's a huge, huge problem. We are talking about Bill Gates. Okay, now let me go back. In 2016 in the Ivory Coast, by the way, this is an Africa-wide problem. They've been introduced in Sudan, in Uganda, in Ivory Coast, in Burkina Faso, in a whole bunch of African countries, and it's spreading. And this is called philanthro-capitalism. Again, foreigners coming in and saying, we're going to save you. You know, we've been growing our seeds and food for centuries. And they're talking about starvation, that, oh, we're going to save the Africans because they're starving. They have no food. The problem of Africa is not lack of food. The problem of Africa is governance. The fact that we have governments that are, you know, they're very corrupt, they're unaccountable, and they don't put in place mechanisms to transport food from where it's more abundant to regions where they may be lacking. No, because even in Uganda has a lot of food, but we have a semi-arid area of Uganda in Karamoja where it's a bit dry, so sometimes there is a shortage of food, but there is surplus food in Uganda because the soil is very fertile, the rain is fertile. So it's an issue of governance. So we were saying to Bill Gates, instead of giving us this GMO system and kind of threatening our food sovereignty, help our farmers. You know, give them, invest, give them the training and a lot of resources, open markets for them, help them, give them, because there are governments, again, we mentioned that in, I think, 2005, there was an African Union meeting in Maputo, Mozambique, where they pledged we're going to put 15% of our budgets into agriculture because it's a backbone of most African countries because a lot of people live in areas. But in many countries, like in Uganda, I think barely 5% of the budget, even less, is invested in agriculture, even though 80% of Ugandans depend on agriculture. It's backbone. So they're not putting enough investment. So Bill Gates, organizations like that should be lobbying governments and the UN and the World Bank and say, guys, forces governments to make sure that they solve this issue, that they invest more in agriculture, they help their farmers.
So do you see?
Yes.
Do you see a contradiction with us, making African farmers self-sufficient, even African countries? Because now that you see when this war in Ukraine, erupted, it's so a shame to see 50 some countries of Africa going to a country that is in war, in the middle of war, begging from crops, begging for it's really outraged to know how fertile our soil is, and talking about why are we bringing all of these soil killers with all the the problem it brings, and here Tony was talking about the same things, and it's bringing some kind of imbalance to our soil. For a century, you explained, African people were self-sufficient when it comes to agriculture. We didn't need all this chemical in our soil.
Exactly.
But how can you explain that? You see those so-called leaders going to Russia, and begging for Ukraine in the middle of a war for some kind of for wheat or whatever stuff, as if the African continent is some place where nothing can grow. Yeah, and what can be the lesson learned? And I'm gonna give you this time, so because we are almost at the end of this show, so right, to really understand what's the lesson learned when it comes to this situation, an entire continent that still depend on somebody else, another country. Why can Bill Gates and his foundations, the money and the power that he have, if he really cares about African people, why can he create program that will help farmers more, so that we can use our traditional ways to grow what we eat.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. Again, that's exactly what we're talking about. That the issue of governance and the lack of investment in agriculture. Which most people depend on. And then, unfortunately, these GMOs are going to make it worse. In Ivory Coast, until 2016, GMOs were banned. But until a bunch of multinationals came in and convinced the government that, we're going to help you with productivity, agricultural productivity, especially rice farming. In turn, allow us to do some GMO, introduce some GMOs, and the Ivory Coast, capitulated and allowed GMOs. And then in 2015, Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation found what is called the WAVE program, which is a research lab near Abidjan on to do with GMOs. And they're doing a lot of GMO research, and they're introducing it. So in Uganda in 2018, the Deutsche Welle, a German media company, went to Uganda on a tip-off, and they went and found a big GMO testing plant center, and they were trying to ask questions and were chased away with security. It was top secret. They could not talk to the director, and then security was called and escorted them off the site, and even threatened them with death. So this is very serious business. The so-called philanthropy. What I'm trying to say here is that once these GMOs take over, it's gonna be a worse situation, because we're gonna have to buy everything from them. So again, the issue of Africans going to Russia and begging is an issue of governance, because it's like everything else. I mean, why should we be the most underdeveloped continent when we have the most resources pretty much of any continent in the world? Literally, add the DRC, add the Sudan, add all these countries, South Africa, Angola, diamonds, gold, uranium, cobalt. We have everything, but we are the poorest country. Again, a continent in the world because of misgovernance. And this is actually very important. One of the reasons why we are in this situation, again, is because of colonialism. We can't blame everything on colonialism, but we had the neo-colonial puppets that took over the colonial and continued the colonial system of exploitation. And that's why we need to rally behind together and get rid of these dictators. Because they're serving foreign interests, and we've not industrialized, we've not done anything. And the plant was planted. I mean, this whole thing was planted by the colonial, engineering of countries, whereby they put us together in disparate groups, but they didn't leave in place a system that, they basically destroyed our indigenous accountability system we used to hold our local leaders accountable, and they did not incorporate them. They kind of destroyed them, and then they say, okay, we are living now. We have a nation, but we have all these people, and we are depending on their laws, on their systems, which we don't relate to. We don't know how to use them. Our local people who are not educated don't know how to go to the court and say, hey, you have to go and prove that this guy is corrupt. Guilt until, like in Museveni is very fond of saying, oh, prove it. We can't, you see, you may, it's corrupt, it's stole money, but we can't just, say someone stole money. You have to go to court and you have to prove evidence, and it has to be whatever. Now you have to hire a lawyer. You have to prove, all these concepts, Western concepts. Instead of like saying, like in Botswana, for instance, Botswana is one country in Africa that has managed to incorporate a lot of the tradition into the legal system, and that's why Botswana, even though
when you mentioned that African leaders are actually corrupt, that right. I was trying to say that some of them actually shown good governance,
right?
And Botswana is one of the successful examples that is not been really highlighted in the media. They're doing pretty good. I've seen the rising consciousness of what should be a presidential leadership. The gentleman in Kenya was doing a fantastic job trying to do the best he can to really raise the standards of what is, a leader is supposed to be. So listen, my friend, we will never, you and me will come together. The show would never, finish. Unfortunately, the time is almost over, and it's a great pleasure to always see you. Do not, even hesitate when you come in town to call me and join forces with you in pushing this issue, because it's no longer just Uganda, no longer just Gabon or Niger. This is a continental issue or issues that we have to really tackle in a very unified way. I'm gonna give you 2 seconds. This is maybe too much for you as the speaker. Do your best so that we can get out of here on time. Okay. All right. So, too much was said. Today was really strategic in terms of diversifying issues. I want you to look at it and kind of, come to some kind of a conclusion about, what can we return, whoever is watching, African people here in the diaspora, the African back home, what should they learn from today's demonstration?
Thank you so much. One, again, we went to 3 places: the British Embassy, the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation, and the White House. So the British and American Embassy is about these double standards and interests that don't value African human rights and lives. And the takeaway from there is that we as Africans, we need to now somehow rally together and take care of our interests, and also fight jointly against these colonial puppets, French puppets, American puppets, even Chinese and Russian puppets. We need to take charge of our destiny, and we need to also look into our governance issues, because at the root cause of why we are in the mess we're in. And again, these governance systems, the colonial systems, we've perpetuated them, and we've not really thought of how to really transform them. Because even when we talk about unity on a large scale, when we still have a lot of messes within us, we you can't build a house on sand. So you have to build on a strong foundation. And actually, that reminds me, on this coming Friday, I think the 18th, there is a Pan-African, actually Francophone protest. Again, mostly focusing on France, in Niger and places, Cameroon and other countries. It's a very, very important protest. So anyone watching this, please do come to that protest. I don't have a flyer ready with me. If I guess I'll share with you at some point. But there's a big protest in DC, and I will send you the name of the gentleman.
Yeah, please connect me. Trying to connect us as you always do, so that I can be in tune, and maybe speak with some of the organizers and leaders. So we can continue to push this issue forward.
So this is one of the In fact, if you want, for the fact I'm involved in another event next weekend, I would have come. This is very important as Africans to join forces and speak out against this. And now the final place, the final place I'm going to talk about was the Bill and Gates Melinda Foundation. Again, it deals with the introduction of genetically modified organisms and foods and seeds into our continent, which poses a threat to our food security. In addition to that, the Bill and Gates Melinda Foundation has a lot of birth control programs, even a program about malaria, which is supposedly supposed to genetically modify mosquitoes. But then these genetically modified mosquitoes supposedly are not supposed to, I guess, transmit malaria, but apparently they tried it in Brazil and failed. And then the mosquitoes became more durable. They became even perhaps more dangerous than they are. So this experimentation, a lot of it is happening in Africa. And, we are being treated as guinea pigs, And again, remember, in America, they had the Tuskegee experiment, and Africa is now there, so we need to call on these entities like the Bill and Gates Foundation that are bringing, why are testing their GMOs in Africa? The new whatever. Okay, I know that in the US they're already producing GMOs. You buy chicken and the chicken looks like a turkey. It's so big. That's unnatural. We don't want that. So
all right, my friend.
That was what it was about. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Listen, Joseph, it's always a pleasure. I know what you bring on the table when it comes to the consciousness, and we do what we do because we know how important these issues are, and if we don't do it, who's going to do it?
Right.
Absolutely nobody. Okay, and then the circle will continue to another generation. So we have to do what we do. I want to thank you again, but I want to highlight the fact that you're not alone. Those gentlemen that always come with you, Tony, with Ether, my sister Ether. She's one of the kind. Many more that I might not have the name here. I want to thank all of them for always, doing the right thing. And I'm telling you, the generation to come will really look back and say, you know what, at least there was, some real, African standing for their own right. So I want to thank you again. And this conversation have to continue. I'm going to look forward for you to send me this information. Please, if you're watching right now, make sure that you go and support these freedom fighters. Tony, Joseph, and Ether, they, out there, support them as much as you can. Financially, come to the meeting. You don't have to be from Uganda to support Ugandan, and all the Ugandan American in the country. I know you guys are watching. You got to support these gentlemen. And it's not about just Joseph. It's not about Museveni. It's about the future of Uganda. It's about the future of Africa. Okay, my friend, thank you again. And I probably will talk to you another time. All right?
You take yourself.
Be safe out there.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Absolutely. All right. So this brings to the end of this program today. This is a new page. Like I said, we have originally Gen TV have one page for both English and French, but we figured that it is very important for us to create this new page dedicated for the English speaking people, so that we can have them on. So please go ahead and subscribe to our page. Leave us comments. We love comments, and let us know what we do good, what we do wrong, and eventually we will change or improve, because the bottom line is to serve you, the people. So my name is Malik Lenzonzo. So that was Talk to Me with Mr. Joseph, Senyonjo, that is not new to this program, always come up here when he's in DC. So we look forward, for another beautiful conversation like today. And, as far as I'm concerned, I say peace out next time on Talk to Me. And thank you guys for watching. Bye now.